it's not about me first. It's about empathy. It's about trying to understand what the customer wants, what are the needs, and how you can actually help them today in overcoming those faster, right? And I think that message is something that can be taken very effectively by marketing. In fact, marketing can be used here as a tool to drive next phase of growth of many organizations today, and in fact to drive those innovations. And I think that's what I believe marketing's role is today.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Yeah,
Pratik. Pratik, while I'm going into the next point, there's an interesting question somebody asked. So I'll probably, and makes context to bring that question.
sure.
One Mr. Avish has asked this question: what are we going to expect by ourselves after the completion of this webinar? Okay, I think that's an extremely good question. For one reason, I like this question is because somebody is respecting their time, right? If you're going to
Yes.
invest 45 minutes of your time to listen to us,
Yes.
you need to have some takeaway.
Yeah.
I think, Avish, on behalf of Pratik, let me say this, both as practitioners of communication and somebody from a very large international brand who's practicing marketing as a function, which got communication. The idea is for us to sort of spend the next 45 minutes to see what are the different ways businesses are aligning themselves now while people are locked down. Now it lockdown extended to 40 days, and going further, even after the lift off of lockdown, people will consume a lot more of content on the digital channels, right? In that context, how companies which are started up and matured organizations should have a framework or a plan for them to be engaged with conversations. That's why we call it unbroken conversations, and have a strategy for us to ensure that we engage with our consumers or prospects. And that's the essence of conversation. And Mr. Pratik was very kind enough to come and give us some examples of how a brand like SAP have ran campaigns in the past, how they were able to attract the audiences to be glued to the brand, how the brand visibility was being established. And they are actually launching certain very interesting campaigns that he will talk to us as part of this conversation. And that's primarily the objective today. Anything you want to add, Pratik, to this?
I think pretty much. I think it's all about a journey, and as a community, as marketers here on the call, I think it's important that we continuously share what we are learning from each other. And as I speak, I'm no expert. I'm as well kind of learning through the inputs that I gather. So I think I'm looking forward to the questions. I think those would enlighten me as well in terms of how others are thinking.
Thanks, Pratik. Pratik, just moving on, I was sort of doing some random research on the internet in terms of how consumers, whether it's a B2B or a B2C, are engaged on digital channels today, right? They're at home, they're on calls, they're in meetings, but then they're consuming content, whether it is from social channels or other digital channels, whether it is a blog channels and stuff. In this context where people are consuming, we have seen that the amount of time they're consuming now in terms of knowledge-based content is increasing a lot. Statistically, I've sort of last 4 5 weeks of data has shown that people have started to consume more of content, which is increasing the knowledge and skill, right? So in this context, what will be your recommendation for companies to look at what kind of channels and how they are able to sensitize their brand on different channel palettes that they have today, so that they're able to get some amount of brand visibility to the en masse audiences in public?
So I would probably advise in my view on this is like this, that yes, of course there is a lot of appetite, and we talking to customers day in day out. So I think now we are getting to a point where we know what are the issues. For example, I'll give you some examples of you know uh, the people who have a lot of time to consume. Like there are people who are on front line right now. For example, people who are trying to manage supply chain, transport, right? Now, if I look at the various segments of audiences, people will have different appetite to consume different kind of content at this time, right? So it really depends upon who you are targeting, and who is it that you are talking to at this time, right? I would like to be very precise to a person who is actually in the front line, and if I have an offering for him. But however, as I said, I think I would like to put my content into three buckets here, and I would say that whether my content is addressing an immediate need, whether my content which I'm doing is more of something which is around probably a mid to a long term kind of a strategy that a customer might have, which will either help in recovery. I believe most of the participants here would be from say a tech startups kind of a background, give that or so what you would know is you'd have to know what your offerings are, and the kind of content that you design for your consumers today should align to that, right? So again, in SAP, for example, we have products which would be relevant not now, but say 6 months, 7 months down the line, right? Somebody who's, for example, let us look at integrated business planning. Now that's a very good knowledge sharing content right now. So if I post a content which will help people understand the details of what IBP is, how it is going to help in organizations in the long run, I think that's good. But whether it's going to be an immediate requirement for customers to solve the current crisis, no, right? So I'll focus there with that kind of a content. But if I look at a content which is about employee safety, which is about how you could manage social distancing, how you can probably use some of the technologies like IoT, what are some of the HR practices, etc., that and how a technology can follow it. I would like to be more direct with that in that sense, right? In that communication and saying that, hey, you have a problem, we have a solutions, let's discuss and try to solve it for you, right? So I think that's an approach I would think about when I'm trying to plan my content. And yes, the appetite has increased quite a bit, but at the same time, there is also, you have to understand that everybody is doing webinars today. Everybody is. So the kind of the volume, the sheer volume of webinars that one gets invited to is enormous. So unless and until you are relevant and aligned to what I just said, right, to what your message is, you would be ignored. You would be ignored. So I think you'll have to think through the audience really carefully before planning the content and the message that you are trying to give out to the market.
Very, very true, Pratik, right? I mean, just to put Pradeep's input in a slightly different perspective, I think to all the audiences, right? In my opinion, the entire content can be broken into about four buckets, okay? I mean, if I have to put as one of the consumer who's consuming the content sitting at home, I would say that our entire content about a brand or the business that we are planning to do an outreach can be broken into four buckets. One is called as instructional content, informational content, factual content, and promotional content, right? And now apply the insights given by Pratik that the content has to be contextual, relevant. If I'm not planning to buy something now, being at home, then giving a promotional content does not make sense, right? Maybe certain amount of informational content, instructional content may be relevant. So I think when you're drawing about your brand in terms of communicating to people over the channels, break your content into these four categories. I will again repeat it: instructional, informational, factual, and promotional, right? And then use that way, embed a layer of emotion and empathy to it so that there is a resonance back to the audiences, and then move it on to the respective channels so that it is consumed by the people, right? Now, on that particular point, Pratik, moving on to your experience being part of SAP, while we are trying to consider these channels to communicate to our audiences, can you run us through some of the examples of some campaigns done by SAP, which sort of gives certain insights to us, looking at how we are actually able to connect back to the audiences?
All right. So at SAP, or I believe it, many of the organizations today, it is, it's about re-strategizing, right? To your point, in terms of what we are trying to go out to the market with. So we have, launched a campaign recently, which calls Navigating the New Normal. And this is basically, about orchestrating a response today. It's actually trying to develop what we call a sense and response mechanism. Yeah, because the situation outside is very dynamic. For anybody to claim that we know what's going on and we can solve it, it's a myth. I don't think that anybody is there who could really uh, say with certainty that's how, what are the next weeks or next months going to look like with respect to business as well as consumers itself, right? So it is very important that we sense and respond, right? A lot of our customers are saying that traditional planning cycles, for example, and that's true for marketing as well, now the planning cycles which used to be months, now people are thinking about what's the consumer behavior going to be next week, about essentials, right? So it is shifting and changing. So as marketers as well, we'll have to think continuously, sense and respond to what the change is happening. And for us to develop that that list, those this ability to listen is very important at this time. And I think the immense amount of focus is going there, so that we can keep talking to a customer, understand what are the problems that they are going through, and then align ourselves to be able to respond to those needs is very critical. So I think that's a big shift, right? I believe, and in fact, at this point, I would also want to say the startups today, and in fact, India is is blessed to have the enormous tech startup ecosystem, because the agility that they bring in today, right, could really solve a lot of these issues, both business and the consumer side. The only thing that we need to look at is how we are quickly sensing those opportunities to address and responding to it. So if I go back to the campaign that we have launched, it has a complete sense and response cycle. In fact, I could share one slide from that, if I may, just to give a sense of what I'm talking about. Um, or I am Just let me know if this is visible uh, to everyone.
Yes, Pratik, you're visible.
Yeah, so here this is we say assess and respond, or sense and respond, as you say. So as the situation is evolving through your ability to connect with the customers through dipstick surveys, through interactions that is happening across your organization within customers, it is important to get those responses, give a structure to it, and then respond back with certain technology interventions that can come in solving some of the problems that you have and going back with that response to the customers, right? And by the way, you have to be agile enough to respond fast, so that you do not maybe the next week the requirement is going to change. So you have to be really agile in this, and navigating the new normal does that. Secondly, because you do not have answers for everything and nobody has, it's important to get together as a community. So what we have done is we have our this campaign we have launched alongside with our um, Indus community. Indus is SAP's user base, and it represents 5,000 plus strong customers. So with that, we are with that community. It has special interest groups on various topics. We are engaging. We are starting to engage with them to understand, what those issues, and then coming back. From a respond perspective, we have a team of technologists, architects, industry experts, all aligned together alongside marketing to really make a response impact effective enough, right? So be it so everybody, from technologists to marketers, they are all under the same response, and we are setting up a response war room which could really help us address customer needs, emerging customers needs into war fitting, right? So that's the campaign that we have. I thought I'll bring for discussion here as well. Maybe this could be of some value to the participants.
No, that's a great insight, Pratik. I think I was also following the navigate the normal hash, your handle on your platform, and first I wish on behalf of Kai that a great success to SAP on this particular initiative. I mean, uh, basically what Pratik is trying to tell for us in terms of moving as a startup community or a startup community, while we have our audiences on the social platform. I'm also sort of referring to a few pointers that I'm getting from the audiences is we need to have a plan to move our consumers on the social platform or a digital platform to move a journey while using these four kind of content, whether it is instructional, informational, factual, or promotional. First is make awareness of the brand, right? And the needle moves from awareness to what we call as attitudinal change to advocacy, right? I think today, in the context of the COVID and we're all locked down and businesses are sort of moving in, I think this is a time when brands can really invest a lot on content to increase awareness, right? Very seldom you will find this to be a right point to make the needle move from awareness to attitudinal change in terms of the content strategy. But then a lot more of deeper awareness can be instilled into the audiences today. And as we sort of move back into normalcy, then you can start pushing content which is more towards attitudinal change, right? The way you pick up your channels, whether it is your social channel, your digital channel, your email channel, your blog channel. It depends on at what point of maturity of moving your communication needle is, whether you're moving a prospect or an audience from an awareness to an attitudinal change to advocacy, right? I think that's relevant. We're moving in, right? And with what Mr. Pratik told about navigating the new normal. Pratik, in this context, a lot of startups, including my own company, we are looking at how to establish and foster partnerships and relationships, especially with larger OEMs, right? There are OEMs from a cloud side, there are OEMs from a CRM side, there are OEMs from enterprise software side. You coming from the other side of table, from the large OEM head of marketing, what will be a piece of input and advice to startups in fostering these partnerships and looking to hold hands with these OEMs and forging ahead in these tough times from a marketing standpoint and communication standpoint?
Absolutely. So I think this is very important, especially in these times that you establish or nurture right kind of partnerships, either from a technology or also from the reach standpoint, right? And we Ram, you're aware that SAP is having a startup incubation programs as
Yes.
well internally, and I work with them quite closely in terms of taking those offerings to the market. In fact, in these crises today, we have found about 7 of those startups there who had got very relevant offerings.
Okay.
Today, which we are taking them as part of our navigating the new normal platform as well. So they are part of it. They are getting customer access through the entire initiative. They are the part of the entire SAP content that has been curated as well to for various stages of engagement. So that's the and in fact, what it is giving, of course, the startup is the complete go-to market, right? So I think we engage as SAP, we engage with startups quite extensively. Of course, these are all B2B startups from where in and complementing to the solutions that SAP provides, right? So I think there is a path, and today most of the startups today will have to find a meaningful partner for them who could really give them the right access and the platform, and really have synergies in terms of what they want to achieve, right? So I think if you're able to synergize well, if you are able to get an alignment of the business plan, it's not just about technology alignment. I think so most of where we I have seen some of the startups that we have is just about technology and whether we are getting the and that's where the relationship starts and ends. I think the relationship actually with the partners should be looked at much beyond that, in terms of how you're enabling the partner that you are choosing is enabling your business plan to come alive, right? Is it
True.
something that adds value to you as a business as well as it adds value to the OEM or the partner that you're choosing? If the is just, if you're able to synergize that relationship, I think that's the best way to work. So we are I think we have been so as I said, those 7 partners, I could give you a few examples there. That one of the partners, for example, today brands are talking about how to engage with the customers in lockdowns, right? So we are helping those that startup who basically works on a AR VR experiences for the brands and products and bringing it to the customers, right? So we are taking it to some of our top customers to see, and they have quickly piloted. A couple of them has already piloted their engagements already, you know. So there are. There are many such examples that we have. We
True.
have so where we have engaged with these startups. So and today, what would an OEM like us expect out of these startups today is also important. As I said, the agility that they bring, the innovation that they bring on the platform is enormous, right? The powerful startup ecosystem that India has. So even today, OEMs, their innovation strategy with customers, a lot of success of theirs also depends upon how they reach out to these startups, right?
Okay.
So it is a win-win situation for all. You will while you are looking out for partnerships in OEMs are looking out for right partners in startups as well. So that's I think it's very important that we set up these relationship in these times. uh, look at them from a GTM plan perspective, that what kind of reach that these OEMs can bring to you, right, for
Perfect.
your offering that you have. That's also important, along with the technology that they provide.
So thanks so much, Pratik. In fact, at this point of time, in the context of what you're saying, pick up two questions, one from the Q&A and one from the participation level, which sort of quickly goes back to the point that you just said. I'll pick the first question from Mr. Siddhartha. It's a very interesting question, and I think we can add you can answer in both the questions together. Question from Siddhartha is that how does one draw a fine line between empathy and taking advantage of the crisis in terms of effective messaging? Wouldn't the audience move away if the brand just writes on a crisis without effectively capturing empathy? Okay, I think that's a fantastic question, Mr. Siddhartha. We'll definitely address that question. I think the related question is that how often should communicate be done internally with employees, investors, etc., with external world, customers, partners, etc.? I think one is about the kind of messaging. I mean, should we be opportunistic to ride on the current situation that is in, and how much larger the spectrum should go in terms of a communication channels, both internal to employees, stakeholders, and to external customers. Do you want to take a first stab at it, Pratik?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is, just this question kind of brought an example. This was what happened in a customer in US who was basically in hospitals now. You know how stressed they are in the current
Mm-hmm.
situation, and he happened to called up the SAP relationship manager, and they were requiring 100-bed facility to be constructed within 24 hours for the expected inflow of patients that they were expecting it was almost like an overnight situation. And so we have systems like vendor Ariba, for example. There's a network which is vendor networks, etc. The person just made a search on it, and he happened to find out one vendor, so a supplier of pet. They connected the two, and within 1 hour this problem was solved, right? So the customer who was in a crisis situation, you are basically, it's no, there is no monetary engagement involved here for it, right? But I believe that relationship between that customer and that person and that day must have, you could have established a bond for a lifetime there, right, in terms of what you would have shown. So I think it is today, it's in this kind of a crisis, I would say that yes, monetization is important for our own growth and survival. That's absolutely an important aspect, but would like to prioritize that over anything else? I don't think so.
True.
Today, my the what we are trying to do is trying to put the step forward and saying that what we can do, we want to do, and ensure that our customers are uh, able to use our technology, to able to wear the storm that is on them, right, to move forward. So I think empathy has to lead anyways, right? There's no doubt about it today, in my mind at least. And in the communication plan that we are drawing, there's no way that we could go upfront talking about what us. It's all about what we can do for them.
Very
uh,
true, Pratik. I mean, just to add to Pratik's point, Siddhartha, I think I'll give another example from Indian context with permission from Pratik, right? A couple of days back, ID Fresh, one of the household brands that we all know, a Bangalore-based organization, May 10th is actually the Mother's Day. So there's a new campaign that they have launched. I think it went live a couple of days back, yesterday or day before yesterday. The campaign is called as Khana Khaya Kya, okay? In fact, this was a campaign that was run by ID Fresh, I think about 3 years back or 2 years back. It's one of the most successful campaigns. But looking at people now confined at home, especially the mothers, the elders, this campaign was such an emotional campaign that they sort of reached out to people saying that let's not celebrate Mother's Day on 10th of May, but then let's celebrate it today and just pick up a phone and call the person that you love who cares, just a phone call saying that, have you had your food, right? I think it's a great example of how to blend empathy into looking at the context and then tapering it down. I think that's a great example. Other example I can give you, Siddhartha, is one. There's a big school in Hyderabad, which was called a Tatwa Global School. They have done a campaign called as Salam Teachers. Okay, while a lot of schools have got a huge issues of admission. In fact, the schools are sitting on in the most important phase of their business journey, which is admission season. Right, people pay money during the month of March April and May, and everybody's gone off. So the entire campaign was more towards saluting teachers, right? We are there because of you. Went and did a nice campaign around called Salam Teachers. I think it's about how do you not trying to be blatantly opportunistic in terms of COVID, but then if you blend your empathy, definitely that will have a great resonance to the brand. And even when we come out of this, aberration and come into normalcy, people will register back our brand and brand perception as we go in, right? Pratik, with your question, I'll take one question from Mr. Faisal. It's an interesting question. In current situations, jobs are doubt to many, and many companies have freezed their hiring. How a staffing company should market at this point of time?
All right. So, good question at this time. I see, as I said, that you are either in three zones, irrespective of where you are today. Either you are immediately relevant and to a current situation, or you might not be. And for people who are like in staffing companies, it's time to build those relationships. It's time to uh, go out and as what I call fill the top of the funnel. It will not convert very quickly. Keep engagement on, keep the communication going, and that's what the marketers can actually do today, at least in those segments, right? For example, what could an automobile company do, right, during lockdowns, for example? And this hiring kind of an if we go into a recession phase, for example, then I think this is going to continue for a time. It's not something that could overcome. So I think it either looking at a strategy from a marketing standpoint to continuously communicate, build those relationships, because as things improve. And secondly, also look at sectors which are doing well. I think you'll have to also uh, look at uh, like pharmaceuticals, healthcare, or sectors which are in essentials like CPG, FMC. If you also focus on those segments, which could become, so maybe a state of not so relevance today, you could enter the realm of relevance. So I think relook at the segments and markets that you have been addressing earlier, and see where the opportunities are now. Both, you'll have to look at both the strategies. Continue to build communication and relationship while they might not be business immediately, but at the same time also look at segments which could uh, keep the lights on
So
for you.
just thanks, Pratik. Just adding it to Pratik's point, Faisal, I think human capital is one of the biggest asset of companies, right? So even there is a freeze now, people will start looking at having human capital increase their organizations. I mean, how do you market you as a staffing company? I think first start using technology. There are a lot of bots available now which can do technical hiring, do pre-screening. I think if you're running a staffing company, I think the best way for you to is to see how you solve the talent acquisition team's problem. Today, talent acquisition problem is not just about getting candidates or resumes, is right getting the right candidate and the right resume. So if you can actually pre-screen using technical bots available today, there are lots of good quality, high predictable bots with great evaluation with about 100 plus skills available. So if you're able to relook into your business and look at how you can go and make a promise to the talent acquisition team that you don't need to screen 100 resumes from me. Today, I think the industry norm for a technical hiring is about 1 is to 27 from a resume to hire, right? If you're able to give a promise that I will reduce that because we will do the back end work of ensuring that we screen it, I think these are the ways we can reinvent ourselves in today's time as a staffing company. Moving on, next question. I'll take some questions, Pratik. There are a lot of questions
Sure.
from our audiences. A very interesting question come from Ms. Divya Rishi. Question is that apparently they are into fabric manufacturing, into textiles. Will it be helpful to print ads in trade magazines, digital print magazines? Is the question.
Yeah. So see, again, printing ads in print magazine, and sorry, which business
Text,
they are in?
textile
Textile.
business. Yeah,
Textile
fabric
businesses.
manufacturing.
Fabric manufacturing. You see, trade publications for us has really worked in, of course, in the B2B segment, right? And that's what your intent is, right? You want to target businesses, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I think it's always good, but more than ads, I think if you are able to what has worked is a thought leadership content that you could go out with some of the so if you are into some if you are into writing blogs, or if you are able to really, because that kind of give a consistent engagement with your customers, right? I think uh, I believe that in a digital your ad, if you're doing an ad, then think about a journey, that where does this ad kind of lead to, and how does that lead to in some sort of an engagement for you,
Yeah,
um, as well. So uh, ad can be effective only when it's as effective as the message that you're going out with, and if it is leading to an engagement after that, right, which
true.
has a clear call to action in it. But I would have seen that I would feel personally, and Shivam, you could add to it. I've seen that content which is more thought leadership has got more engagements
Then
than
an ad.
ads in the recent. But that has been my experience, Shivam. What do you?
No, I think my response to Divya would be that very honestly, don't spend any money on the ads now, digital print ads. It's not. What I would recommend is that there are multiple groups available on different social channels, in fora, in multiple blog platforms. Engage there,
Absolutely.
and talk about your product and what is your unique selling propositions there. I think that will give you a much better return on investment for the bucks of money that you spend in here, which is primarily your time and creativity that you can either do it with your team or just use certain individuals to help you out. But at this point of time, I would not recommend you to go and spend money on print ads. But then there are better ways for you to engage to audiences like groups, multiple forums are available. You can strongly participate in that. One interesting question we got, Subbu. I would take this question. I think this is one of my good friend, Mr. Subbu. I think Pratik. The question is: could you please share tips for startups to scale one-on-one communication with customers and channels? Scaling comms with tight resources.
Yes. So, okay. So basically, if I understand the question, it is basically about how to scale to one-to-one communication. Is that
Yes,
what? Okay.
yes,
And then basic also the second part too is comes with tightening of resources,
resources.
right? That
Yes,
how do we get to that? See, that's the case with us. So one-on-one communication, you have to personalize, you have to get there. But the art of getting into one-on-one um, is very it has to be, and I'll go back to the campaign that I was talking about. I think that framework really helps us,
mm-hmm.
because that assessment gives us a list of, say for example, the possible talking points that I have with a particular customers, and then I can really look at individuals. So when I try to funnel down from a market issues and industry issues to a particular customer, I know precisely what is it that I need to talk about. So what you do is you do not try to, every time when you are doing a one-on-one communication, you do not try to reinvent every time what should I talk to that customer, but what you try to do is you already have a template available on, and you know what these issues are, but you try to narrow it down and customize it really to that particular customer's needs and requirements. And I think that forms a very effective communication. Second thing, what we think about is that if you could use surveys as a tool to understand, I think, I'm not sure if uh, as a part of sensing, then your one-on-one communication automatically would improve in terms of its relevance when you are trying to make it. Because the biggest issue when doing one-on-one communication is the assumption that I know everything about the customer, right? And we try to send something and draft it out and send it to them. So I think uh, that trap you could save yourself by doing a bit of a research on the customers first, and then trying to see how it maps to the list of issues that you might have already identified you want to talk about, right?
True.
So that way I think you could do it. Scaling in terms of see, marketing is a uh, is a channel where you will have to continue to be asked to do more with lesser and lesser resources. So it's been the kind of uh, business as usual for us. But in these times, I think resources are going to get even more scarce. So as the digital is the way to engage.
True.
Uh, communities, digital, as much of digital communities that you could engage with is something that will give you better returns of your investment. Engage with thought leadership, engage with relevant content to your business, and I think that's the key to get more with less.
Yes.
Um,
Thanks, Pratik. I think probably just to add to that, Subbu, one of the things that you can use is chatbots, which are not very expensive these days. You can use Facebook messengers. You can use certain tools that are available today for you. So one is effective communication about your brand. And then very important when you're doing a one-on-one communication to prospects also, Subbu, is personal branding, right? I think you need to stand out today. I think every individual have to anchor on certain personal branding for individual and the brand that you're looking to take in and engage into a communication with the customers. So use a lot of bots, use a lot of chat windows, make some investment of time to create a personal brand based on the USP of the individual entrepreneur or your products or services, and then start branding and resonating that back to the customers. I'm moving on to the next question, Pratik. I have lots of questions that we need to sort of take back here. This one, Mr. Bijit Singh's question is, what will be the effective pitch to sell company software products in the current situation?
I think we dealt on that, and there is no one effective pitch. Again, I'll dwell upon those again. You know, a software today, what is it that your software solves for, right? That is first you have to understand for the customer. The effective pitch is very business centric. You know, what is the business issues and problems that you are trying to address through your product is form the core of your communication. A lot of time we as technology players, we have a tendency to move towards capabilities of what our solution can do, assuming that business and people who are consuming it would be able to translate to business benefit, and trust me, it doesn't happen, right?
Mhm.
I have examples of, for example, I was hosting a webinar which had one communication gone out to about a 2000 base, and suddenly we realized that there are no registrations. We reviewed that communication and we realized that we were doing only capability conversations there, right? And it was
Yes.
not appealing to the CFO audience that we were trying to engage on the software. The moment I changed that conversation to a P&L impact, in that 2000, when I said I got 400 registrations and 200 people ended up attending it, right?
True.
So I think it is about how do you say your story. The pitch has to be business centric. It has to be centered around what is the measurable business outcome that your software can deliver. And if you have yet not invested in creating those stories for yourself, please go back to your customers and understand from them what business impact you have created and bring it out in your communication. Because without that, I don't think a product which is had worked in the past, and in these cases, in these scenarios, I think the uh, feature functionality
Sure.
approach would any which ways not work, right?
Very good. Me coming, that's a great input from a product company, software company, SAP. Erstwhile in my life, I used to work for Oracle, in a way competitive to Pratik. Biljit, I think it's a great time for you, a company with the software products. For you, it's an entry point is difficult. It's not about your lead, your funnel or anything. Right now, today is what your entry point, right? And how much can your product be sticky to your customer, right? I think it's a great time for you to offer pilots, even if it's a free 10 users, 5 users. I think get the people believing that your product has got a great value proposition to give to the end customer, be it an ERP, CRM, or any of the products that you're trying to do. I think it's a great time for you to try out free onboarding with pilot prospect with a great messaging in terms of direct benefit that the product will give to the end business user. I'll take another question, interesting question here, Pratik. And I can relate to this question is because a couple of such solar industries I worked with. The question is from one Miss Sonali Gupta. Please suggest how a consultant in solar renewable sector market keeping empathy in line. So my first question actually didn't understand. Is it for a company which is into solar renewable sector or a consultant who's trying to sell into solar renewable energy? I didn't understand, but that's an interesting question. I'll wait for the attendee to clarify the question, Pratik. I'll pick the other question. There's a question from Mr. Arun Ravi. In the in the crisis, there's a lot of concern among employees regarding to loss of job. How do companies undertake efficient employee management to keep employees loyal to company and maintaining productivity?
Right. See, these are some of the issues that I think that um, uh, tools that are available in HR are trying to really solve for. For example, how do you maintain, um, the productivity of the employees at this point is a very important issue across organizations, especially when they are working from home. And I think this is the largest working from home kind of in which world has ever seen, right? In terms of, so I think it is not something which has been evolved yet. I think, but as I said, a lot of it has to do with the leadership. I think in SAP, for example, there have been a lot of initiatives from HR talking about leading, and there were sessions for leaders about how leading in these times. Uh, so I think those have really helped. I think so talking to the leaders within the companies and looking at the approaches that they are taking today is very important. And I think I'm not an HR expert though, but I think I can talk about some of the initiatives which SAP is taking, and they are pretty much keeping the employees engaged in terms of conversations. And secondly, uh, also driving a company-wide initiative at this time helps, right? That how do you making everybody feel involved as a part of a mission where you are trying to go through. I think that's a very important message that an organization from the top needs to be going down to the employees, and that would really help. So I think the feeling of cohesiveness would really come in to an initiative like this.
Yep, sure. Thanks, uh, thanks, Pratik. A couple of things I can share my experiences as part of the, I mean, being my own entrepreneurship here, Pratik, is I think the biggest asset now for organizations is human capital, right? I think a lot of startups and startup companies always look at this dichotomy of pot between diluting. I think this is the best time to retain your employees is dilute yourself to employees. The best assets, you make them involved. I know that there's going to be a lot of issues in terms of cash flows. You may have clients, but clients may not be able to pay you on time. You may have uh, onboarding new clients may be a problem with a lot of startup companies. But if you want to stay vested with employees who are actually investing their time in building rich content, rich assets for the organization, I think good time to dilute yourself, well, right? And make the employees part stake of your company. I think that's the best way for you to keep them. I don't want to use the word loyalty. Keep them vested with the business so that they can draw a circle of ownership around them to see that how they can innovate to take the product or a service back to the market. And trust me, the best way to show our commitment back to employees is to keep them on board. Feel free to go and talk to them, right? There are companies I've seen where people are very finding difficult to go and tell an employee whether can you sort of take a small cut in your salary, or I think best is talk to them. Treat your employees as part of a family. If there's a problem in a family between a husband, wife, a father, and a son, and a daughter, I think they talk about the problem on a dining table or an evening couch. So I think openly talk to the employees, make them feel part of your problem. I'm sure that your employees can be the best solutions for you. I have experienced that in the last 22 days with my employees. I think that will work very well for us. Moving on, Pratik, I think we have some more questions to come in, and we have about 10 more minutes of time. The question is from Mr. Atul Verma. How would a brand custodian go about establishing himself or herself as a thought leader, especially without digital space knowledge?
Right. I think it's a time to acquire digital space knowledge, because that's
It's become the
that's
hygiene now.
that's that's the normal, right? See, there was a time. Okay, let me go back. There was a time where you used to have events experts in marketing, right? There was people who were just focused around it, but then suddenly it became a norm. Everybody is a marketer was expected to have. Now there was a time when you would want to have a digital marketer, right? Now is the time where every marketer has to be digital, right? In that sense. So I think you do not have the luxury of, and of course we have there was joke going around saying what what started digital transformation within your organization. The options was the CIO, the CFO, and COVID-19. I think COVID-19 has started the digital
True.
transformation of marketers as well. I think it's a very important time to embrace that, and go with it. That would be my advice to you. uh, that's the future. But I think, of course, you as marketers, you bring in a lot of understanding, insights, ability to go out, start engaging in conversations. If you don't need to have knowledge of really digital to start a blog, or a thought leadership space. Do a video blog if you can. Those are some of the engagements. In fact, that's something that has been in my to-do list for multiple years. I have not been able to start that at all, but I think I can fairly say that that could be an approach that you could take to establish yourself, if you want, in your domain, to be a thought leader. But on digital, I would urge every marketer on the call to take the plunge and go deep as much as you can. That's
Absolutely. I mean, Pratik, actually, if you see my background, I written something called as a marketing on dark side. That entire property I've created about 2 years back. And it's all primarily talking about what an individual should organize himself or herself in situations like this. And probably I'll talk to Vijay to see that we can have a follow-up session on the marketing on dark side. But to people who are looking to get onto digital platform, there are two big notions people have. They think that going digital is very expensive. You need to have agencies to be hired, which charges a lot of money to go digital. I think a lot of startups and startup companies, my request is that if you're able to follow a disciplined 30-day cycle, and then actually I put a calendar for 30 days that will make you from point one to point two on your digital transformation, right? And you need to invest about an hour to 2 hours of day per day. I will actually send that timetable of 30 days, which will cover about six elements, which is about blogging, thought leadership, personal branding, etc., etc. But the problem is that people don't invest time, right? They want to be digital transformed, but they don't want to invest time. So for those people, there's a 30-day schedule that I've prepared in, like a timetable. I'll share it with Vijeta. I'll circulate to all the audiences. Practice that 2 hours a day. I think at the end of the 30 days, you will be able to do digital transformation, digital work without hiring any agencies, at least to an extent that you can have your brand and startup take forward. Pratik, to your next question, very interesting question from Mr. Ratnesh Gupta. While most of people are online, could it be good time to roll out new food brand while one knows on floor facelift can only happen way later post lockdown? In case it should be done, what approach will be the best for the startup, for a food online startup?
See, I think there was I forgot the brand, but there was the soon as the lockdown opened up in China, there was a luxury brand. I just saw the news. I don't know, Shivram, if you remember the name. There was a news that it did a multi-million business on the first day, and it was a
Mhm.
luxury brand. Right? So I think it's very difficult right now, and everybody was predicting that the luxury brands would have a tough time
Yes,
at the
true.
moment you open up, right? So as I said, the consumer behavior on things is something which is very unpredictable. For me to give an advice to you, say whether you do it or you don't do it, and I would go back to Shivram's point, to start with, it's saying that the 100% of those shots which are missed are not played it all, right? So I think this is one shot that you should definitely take,
Absolutely.
and go. And in fact, you should look at the engagements. I think the good thing about digital is you could always do ABC. You could see whether your A messages worked, whether your B messages worked, or you see what is. So try a sample size, start engaging with a sample set of a customers, see what the response is, how they are engaging with you, and then try to build up your brand. I think this is a very important time where you should connect with your customers, try to build your brand with the relevant content, especially with trying to identify the communities of foodies, bloggers who actually talk about it, those brands, and what are they talking about? How do you engage your brand with them at this time? I think it's I don't think anybody should stop yourself from communicating and talking about what you want to launch in the future.
You hit the nail, Pratik. I think to Ratesh, my one line answer is that for food business, you're going to go online, trying to reserve your cash, and the best approach is influential marketing, right? This is one industry where influential marketing really, really will work. Find out, look at the segmentation of your food brand, what segment, what category you're trying to offer. Do research for your right influencers. Again, there are multi-tiered influencers. You don't need to go all the way always to Shah Rukh Khan, like what Big Basket went as influencers. There are multiple influencers. You may not, for all you know, Mr. Pratik can be one of the influencers for one of the food brands if he's a food lover, right? So look at influencers who are socially active, and I think influencer marketing is the best for you to start if you're looking at in food online. There's one more question I'm going to pick up now, Pratik. Tulika, how are you on time?
We have
I
some
think
more time. It's okay. I mean, if you both are comfortable, please do continue.
Yeah, no worries. I have a hard stop at about 5, so I have some time. I can go on, Vijeta. So I think I will pick up a question, Pratik. Pratik, are you open? Are you open if you need extend by 5-10 more minutes? Because I have few questions that I think we should answer.
no problem. We can continue. Please go ahead.
Fantastic, Pratik. So I'm picking a question from Mr. Chandresh B. Rao. His question is like this: post-COVID, we foresee limitations on face-to-face meetings with prospects, both local and international. What all effective mediums can be used to overcome this limitation? Online meetings can help us only that much.
No, I absolutely agree. In fact, this is the problem that we are also grappling with because, when we look at our solution conversations and discussions, and especially on the products that the high value products and items that you might deal with, it's important to have those face-to-face conversations. But, so it is a challenge for everyone. And I don't think anybody would have a clear answers, but what we have done ourselves here is that, for example, we used to use a lot of design thinking as a technique for our businesses to talk about the business problems, unseen issues, and try to solve them, right? Uh, SAP has always had a virtual design thinking tool which could enable people to collaborate, come together, and do the similar exercise that you would do in the room to solve a design thinking problem. Now, design thinking, if you don't know what it is, it basically tries to solve for a particular persona an issue or something which needs envisioning, right? So it's kind of a tool and a technique to be able to solve, get into the shoes of your customers, and then try to imagine a solution that can works best for them. So that was never imagined as a session that can be done virtually, but we are seeing that we have been able to successfully do that right now. So I think it is, as you are seeing, that you would see that there are tools which are evolving, there are techniques which are evolving, which are making you more and more effective in dealing with your engagements and customers online. I think don't shy away in trying those tools and in investing in them is would be my 2 cents here. It could become more specific if I know what solutions that are, but I can uh, talk about from an SAP parlance. We are talking to our customers are engaging, and our sales teams are looking at some of those opportunities and deals as well. So yes, but it's all happening on the virtual. Secondly, enable uh, digital signage and all those things. You don't need a physical file going to sign an order. All those things, I think, needs to uh, how how do you enable the entire purchase or sales process online is an important uh, aspect to you look at, and look out for these tools. They are evolving fast, I think,
True.
and adopting to this.
True. I mean, adding my 2 cents onto that, Pratik, right, is that, I mean, I have slight point in this question. I think post-COVID, face-to-face meetings will not stop, right? I mean, you will have face-to-face meetings, but the problem will, what is going to happen is that when humans are going to change, right? We are still going to be people, whether it is 6 months or 4 months or 3 months. What's going to definitely impact businesses is travel, right? Am I going to travel from point A to point B to meet a face-to-face meeting? And if the product or service needs a face-to-face meeting, what needs to be done? I think, Mr. Sandesh, one of the things that we should look at, especially if it is an small and medium side of companies who cannot have distributed offices and stuff, is build partnerships, right? If you have a prospect sitting in Hyderabad and you're in Bangalore, and it's not possible for you to commute from Bangalore to Hyderabad, I think you can build a partnership where local representation can happen for you. Yes, if there is no face-to-face meeting, so much so technology can support you. You can't go and touch, smell, feel a product. I saw one more a person asking about fabric. I know my customers have to touch my fabric and see. I think those things, even if you want to deploy technology, that will be extremely expensive for us to deploy to replicate the sensory organs of human body in terms of getting to a customer. But I think collaborations will help. Have distributed tie-ups, partnerships who can represent you well, so that you don't have to invest first, burn cash on travel, and have a physical representation for you to go and look at it. And then, as Pratik said, there are definitely tools available today to interact with customers, have an experience it as much as possible in terms of real time to interact with the customers, right? Then I'll go to one more question, Mr. Ansu Anusanath. How do I suggest my client whom to select from my vendor network, where I shall be loyal to my vendors as well? I am in construction industry with my vendor network of service providers and products who are competitive. Miss Anu Sanath. Anu Sanath is a name. I'm reading the question because I'm still not understanding the question. So, how do I suggest my clients whom to select from my vendor network, where I shall be loyal to my vendors as well? I am in construction industry with vendor networks of service providers and products who are competitive. Miss Anu Sanath. I am assuming that this is a question that she's an aggregator of different vendors and how the customers should choose the vendor there.
Um, see, I see. I can answer it from a tools perspective. Like for example, what SAP how SAP helps in such scenarios. We have a tool called Ariba where we have you know millions of vendors worldwide listed there, right? So in present scenario where customers are looking for alternate sourcing, they are looking at different geographies to from where the supplies can happen. I think Ariba is proving to be a very important tool. And Ariba has already, we have offered some of the source services in Ariba free at this time to customers so that they can actually. So I think you could go out on Ariba tools and you could look at. You should be able to sign in and should be able to have an access to the vendors which Ariba networks provide. And this service, a part of the service is coming free at this time for a lot of for our customers.
Fantastic insight, Pratik. I'll pick probably last two questions, Pratik. The penultimate question is by name Rakshit. Hi, agri-tech sector is in initial stages in India. What would be your thoughts on agri-tech startups? Companies can face this situation being in early stages. Can I take this question, Pratik?
Oh yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Rakshit, the reason I'm taking this question is that I work very closely with companies like NASCOM. They have a specific center of excellence that they have instituted for agri-tech startups. Okay, I think the best way for you as a startup company in agri-tech is to collaborate with company, institutions like NASCOMs, or to extent there is a focused panel that TI has got for agri-tech startups. There are a lot of cohorts which are specific for agri-tech. I think the best way for you to take your startup company forward is to identify those institutions or bodies which are very focused on agri-tech, collaborate with them, and then because for you to be in agri-tech, it's just not about your tech, you need access of data, you need access of use cases for you to really go and deploy. There's an amount of government support that needs to be given for you. I think it's very difficult for you to do it individually, work with these institutions. That would be my input, working with NASCOM Center of Excellence for Data Sciences and AI. Any input from your side, Pratik?
No, I think you're right. I think you need a lot of access right now, even from government as well as the weather forecast. I don't know which part of agri you are in, but it's something. These problems can be solved through an ecosystem coming together, right? So I don't think agri tech is one such place where the ecosystems can come in. I think if I can have a pick of a question, I was seeing a question on events actually
I was
asked by Divya. Do you
I
want
was
to?
about to
Yeah,
take that. No, go
yeah.
ahead, Pratik. Both
I
of us can
think
answer this
yes.
question.
So if you are okay, so the question was around the future of events,
Yes.
and with face-to-face events would no longer be choice of marketers. I think at this time, as marketers are, we are forced into a SAP by the way before this happened was we used to do a lot of events. In fact, our customers were used to meeting us in person to understand the propositions because of some of the complex nature. So hence, event has been a primary choice of our engagement. But overnight, we've turned ourselves into digital engines, 100% digital, right? And whether that has, and of course, it has taken some effort, unlearning and learning, and with a very steep learning curve to go over it. But I think face-to-face events will have their its relevance in the post-COVID environment. Just that now the organizations would rationalize and see that where would they want to, where exactly in the stage, which stage they would want to use events, depending upon. And events used to be the first connect point. I think events will evolve into something which is more towards the later end of the funnel, kind of an engagement, rather than trying to engage with the customers at the top end of the funnel. Out of this scenario, one good thing that would happen, and we have to look for positives coming out of everything. So one positive thing that there would be a digital marketing as a will evolve into, both from specializations of individual as well as a science across. So I think there would be an evolution of digital which would be put on fast track because of what's happening. But at the same time, events would be reevaluated for their use and their placements in the sales cycle. I might see reduction in the frequency of the events going future.
Yeah.
That's yeah,
True,
that's
true,
what my
Pratik.
take is.
Just to add to that, Pratik, right? My take on event management and or event itself, right, is there going to be a lot of formation of communities, online communities. I think what will event companies will do or event management companies will do is to start building those assets called communities. People will go and participate in the communities. I can give an example, a couple of examples. Draper House is actually building a great community today with Bangalore. Dialogues Cafe, who were doing close to about 30 events per week, are now completely taken the events because they build properties called as dialogues with books, dialogues with travel, dialogues with board games. I think people will start investing in building communities, online communities, which are very specific to their like-minded people, and then the event companies will sort of use that asset of community and sort of drive events. I think events will continue. Yeah, people will go and participate in events, but then I think we are seeing a lot of brick and mortar event companies or platforms now moving into online events, and they're still doing a decent job. I think we have pretty much covered most of the questions, Pratik. I would actually would like to summarize with one nice statement I saw somewhere. Yeah, I don't want to call out the name. It was not a question. It was a very nice statement saying that we need to continue give monthly salaries and have our car, house, gardener in current prices. I mean, I think that just came out of somebody's heart. I completely believe that. I think we all need to sort of stay strong. I was talking to somebody, to all the remaining participants on the call. We are not going through a hurricane. We are not gone through a volcano eruption or a tsunami or some other natural disaster where infrastructure is broken. Buildings are broken. Buildings are washed away. Roads are washed away. Yes, we are in a situation where we are dealing with a very, very unknown enemy that we can't see and fathom, but things are still normal, right? There's nothing broken outside our houses. So when we are able to support the government, be safe at home and do our business as usual and go out, we can start off where we left because we don't have to recreate like what happened in New Orleans when Katrina attacked or what happened in tsunami to Chennai, what happened, right? So I think in that way we are safe. Don't try to be too much worried about what's going to happen in the future. As both Pratik and myself, being marketing that we practice, in every function of a business, marketing is one function which eternally gives optimism, right? Whether it is other functions, they are going to be ups and downs.
Absolutely.
But as a function of marketing, the only job that marketing function has to do to a business is to provide eternal optimism. I think that's what I would say, and I really thank Pratik to share his time from your schedule and giving your inputs. Thank Thai as a platform for us to talk to all of you guys, and thank all the participants. Great questions, great interactions. I know a few questions we may have missed it, but Tulika can share our coordinates and you can shoot questions to us. Thanks, Pratik. Your closing
Thank
moments.
you. Thank you so much, Shivram and Thai, for this opportunity. It was lovely interacting. And in fact, I would just want to, take uh, two statements here. Just one is right now it's important, listen in, right, assess and communicate. I think that's very important, irrespective of which segments you are in, where you are operating. It's important. And secondly, look for right partnerships at this time. Extend your partnerships network. uh, and these are the two takeaways that I would want to give, if nothing else, that our audience should immediately invest in if they are not doing so.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Tulika, Vijeta, we are done. We thank you and Vijeta for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much,
Shivram. Thank you,
Shivram.
Prateek.
Thanks, Tulika. Thanks,
Thanks,
Sujata.
Pratik. Catch up
Sure.
soon. Bye bye.
Bye.
Okay, and nice of you, Shivram and Pratik, to share so much of insights. And I think, Shivram, you have also put your email ID on there. So we have been getting a lot of inputs from various people. That was a very insightful question. The questions were well answered, a lot of information. This was wonderful. I think eternal optimism. I think that's so beautiful. You summed it up really well, Shivram and Pratik. From the SAP point of view, you're very clear that you will not stop. You have to communicate, stay in touch with the customers now more than ever. You all have done a great job, and we are eternally grateful to you as well, because the feedback, the knowledge, insights has been awesome. We would love to stay in touch with both of you, and maybe as things evolve, maybe we should come back and figure out how many more things that we can do for the community and ecosystem. So at TIE, we believe that we should be fostering entrepreneurs, help them out, give them the right knowledge, mentoring, and you guys have been very, very kind, very, very supportive. Appreciate your time. Thank you. There are kudos coming in from everyone, by the way, Pratik and Shivram. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Vijeta.
Thanks
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Signing
Thanks,
off.
Vijata.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
All
everyone.
right. Take
Bye.
care. Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah, signing off. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.